Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, we will be completing the to-do page. So let's jump right into it. So in the last video, we had created this page. We had a button to add to-do and a cross button to remove a to-do and a check button to check the to-do. But these buttons aren't functioning. So we need to add functionalities to them. So the first thing that we want to do is add to-do. So on the button click, what we want is for a pop-up to open. And a pop-up in React.js is called a modal. So how do we create a pop-up? It is very easy as we are using a library. So we'll go to that evergreen library, browse components, and they have already bootstrapped then overlay for us. All we need to do is click this button and we get a pop-up. Now the only thing left to do is copy this code and create a new folder, modals, create a new file, add to do modal dot JSX. You know the shortcut RFC to create a functional component as we want a functional component. Put the code here, save it. Now, this is a state, but what we want is to send props from a parent component to this child functional component. We'll see that how to do it in later half, but for now, we'll just put it as true because we just want it to display it. And we'll remove this function also. Okay, we'll just remove this part, set state, put an empty function and save it. We are good to go. Now we'll open the to-do model and just for display, we'll call this add to-do modal. Save it, let it compile, and there's an error. Okay, yeah, so we haven't imported this. Now we are good to go. And if we see this, we see the pop-up. Now we want this pop-up to only open when we click this plus button. So how do we do that? We will use states for this. So the first thing to do to create a state is to write state is equals to and define a state name. So for this we'll have a add to do modal state. And initially we want it to be false. But as soon as we click this icon button on click, we want this add to do modal state to become true. So how do we do that? Just create a function and say this dot state, no, set state, and we'll change the state of add to do modal and put it as true. Let's save it, and right now nothing happens because we haven't passed this state to our model actually. It's just true right now. So how do we do that? We'll get props from the function as we send it from the constructor, and then we'll say props dot is shown will be our variable name, and it'll be props dot handle modal add to do modal. This looks good. Okay, so we have to actually remove the function because this itself is a function. Handle modal, yep, yeah. So this is fine. Now we'll define this model handle add to do modal, and in this function, what we want is to handle that modal, and the handling will do nothing but set this trait to false. Let's save it. Now all that is left is to pass these props. This dot show is equals to this dot prop this dot state dot add to do modal state, and let's just to be sure we'll copy the same name, and this dot this dot handle to do modal dot bind, or there's a better way to do this is to pass it directly. So this dot handle to do modal, save it. Okay. This should be better. To do is to this bind it to this thing. Yep. Again, let's inspect, see what is the issue. Okay. I think we'll have to add it in the constructor itself. So we need to create a constructor, and here we need to do this dot handle modal, this dot handle modal dot bind to this. So by this way we can directly use it here. This dot handle to do modal, and now again there seems to be an issue. Okay, it needs to have a super function. Let's save it. Again, search with render. Are the brackets correct? This is how you define it. Okay, so this is what was making all this wrong. So this actually is a function in itself. So whenever it calls this, you don't want to put two brackets because that will just call the function instead of calling the function. So if you press on this button, nothing happens. Now is the spelling correct? Shown. Okay. So now, yep, we have our dialog box. Now we want to modify the dialog box. We want to say add to do and save it. Let's see. Yep. Now confirm label. We'll just say add. So if you press this button, it'll add it. We'll just remove it. We'll add our own button automatically. So we can remove this by saying footer is footer. Okay, let's just go through all the props. Has footer. Yep, has footer should be false. So now we don't have that footer because we will create it by ourselves. And this cross button is as it is. Now what we want is a text field in not area, text input field. And in this we'll have a label named add. Okay, let's just keep it. Let's remove the title also. And let's remove the footer. Header also has header false. We will add the label ourselves, add to do, and save it. This looks fine. So you have our add to do and this. Now, placeholder we can add. We'll say add your to dos. So if you click this, yep. Now we'll have another button. This button will just say add, save it, and we have our add button. Let's change its appearance to primary, save it, and we have our add button also. So on this on click, we'll handle the button later. We'll just create a mock function and we'll see if the button is working or not. We'll just console log something, log add button, save it, inspect element console, click on add and add button. Yep, we have our add button. Leave all these warnings. These are just something related to strict mode, which is a concept for 16 React, but we are not using. So let's just save it and this works. Uh, Handling of these text boxes and all, we'll do it in another video. For now, we'll just create these basic UI templates. Now the thing left is to remove this. So how do we do that? All we want is for this to be not shown. Or we can actually send a request to remove this. So first of all, let's just add an on click listener, which will just log console.log remove to do. Open the inspect, click here, see the console, and you can see we have a remove to do. Now we cannot add the functionality to this button right now because on this click we actually want it to call the backend and remove this task from there. So that we will be doing in a separate video. But for now, the logging is fine enough. And also we want when the checkbox is clicked, it should call the backend and it should make the state of that particular to do as true or completed. So that we'll do it in another video. And we'll just put an on change listener here. And as soon as it changes, we'll log the change. Console.log value. I think this won't work actually because it will pass the event, I guess. Yep, it will pass the event. Yeah, it will pass the event. So what we actually need to do is event dot target dot checked. I think so. Yep, save it. And yeah, so we got a true. Now if we remove it, we'll have a false. So this was also done, but rather than doing this, we actually wanted to send it to the backend and get the data from there. So that's it for this video. If you have any doubts, reach out to me in the comment section. Please like my video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.